Suprabhatam friends, welcome to my channel Plants and Me. This is Dr. Devi from Mangalore, Karnataka, India. I am doing a repotting of a few Hoyas which I had bought online. This is Hoya Crimson Princess. This is Hoya obtusifolia. This is Hoya Paul Shirley. Nice name. This is Hoya Rangsan. In the natural habitat, the Hoyas are epiphytes. That means they grow on the tree barks. The main root will be there in the ground, but it will be anchored into the bark of some tree, and then they grow on the bark of large trees. On those barks, they give out roots which are called as adventitious roots. These roots, they absorb the food material from the bark of the tree. So we need to mimic a potting mix which will make the plant think that it is growing on the bark of a tree. So for that sake, the potting mix of Hoyas is totally different. We don't use mud. There are a few species which grow in the mud, but what plants I have today, they all grow on the tree barks. So the potting mix will consist of this coconut chips. These are chunks of coconut. You also get a cocoa peat, that is the powder of the coconut, but this is not powder. This is coconut chips or coconut chunks. Then I will be using this pumice powder. These pieces are about 2 mm to 4 mm in size. This will make the potting mix very airy. Hoyas love acidic soil, so I am using this Epsom salt. Coconut chunks will not have much nutrition in it, so I will be providing nutrition with this Vermi compost. Then the pot which will be used for repotting will be this orchid pot. The speciality of this orchid pot is they have got this aeration slits at the base of the pot. So this will give air to the roots of the plant. That is why I am using this orchid pot for repotting the Hoyas. Now we will start with the repotting. To this coconut chunks, I am adding about 3/4 of this quantity. I am adding pumice stone powder. So I have added pumice stone powder. I am mixing it. I'll give it a nice mix so that the chunks and the pumice powder get mixed easily and nicely. So they have got mixed nicely. I have got 4 plants, and this is a 4-inch orchid pot. So it requires only a handful of vermicompost per pot. So for 4 pots, 1, 2, 3 and 4. 4 handfuls is more than enough. For 1 pot, 1 handful of vermicompost is more than enough. Now I am mixing it nicely. I am mixing all the 3 components. And these are mixed. Next comes the Epsom salt. For 1 orchid pot size, about half a teaspoon. So this is half a teaspoon. So this is 1 teaspoon. 1, 2, 3 and 4. That is more than enough. So I am mixing this again nicely. So this is mixed. Now at the base of this orchid pot, I am going to keep this coconut coir or coconut chunks. So that is going to help in aeration of the roots. Hoyas are very much prone to root rot. They do not like excess water. They do not like drying out also completely. And the roots should not sit in water for a longer time. So these slits will help the air to move around the roots, and in fact I'm covering those slits, otherwise the potting mix will come out. But I'm keeping coconut chunks, so that will help in aeration of the roots. And coconut chunks, as much as possible we should use old one, or if you are buying a new coconut chips, soak them in water for some time, for about overnight, then wash off. What I am using at the base is a very old coconut chunks which I had already. Now above this I am going to add a little bit of the potting mix which I prepared. Now comes the trick. Hoyas, they don't like rainy season. They like the humidity, but they don't like the rainy season. And in these chunks, if the water stays for longer time, the roots will rot and the plant will not survive. So to protect the roots from sitting in the soil, I am going to keep a few of this leca. Just place like this leca. Now I am going to do with the other pots also, same thing. At the base, coconut chunks. Just obliterating the slits, not completely. The slits will allow the air to pass, but it is obliterated so that the potting mix does not leak. Little bit of potting mix, then leca. The Hoyas can be potted in coconut big chunks also, like this. In this big chunk also it can be potted. What does this coconut chunk do? It gives the feeling of bark to the Hoya plant. I will start with this rang sand. I have removed the cocoa peat. Here it is. I have put leca at the base. Now this is a big root ball. I'll require little depth in this pot. So I will remove a bit of this potting mix. Now I added leca at the base. I'll keep this plant and add few more leca around the root. The root ball was very big, so it required quite a bit of leca. So the root is surrounded by leca. Now I'll fill this with potting mix. Now this is a vine and it is drooping down, so I need to give it a trellis. I will just search for one piece of, oh, it is here. So I'll take this and poke it here inside. I have poked that piece of wood. Now I will tie this like this. Everything is accessible in my garden. I have tied the vine with this branch and I filled the pot with more potting mix. I'll be doing the same with all the other Hoyas also. This is another one, Hoya Rangsan. This is Paul Shirley. Whatever method I followed with Rangsan, same thing. This is Hoya obtusifolia, sorry. So what I followed with Hoya Rangsan, same I have followed with the other Hoyas also. This is Hoya Princess. Paul Shirley. So all the 4 Hoyas are now repotted. As a precautionary method, antifungal can also be added. This is my usual antifungal which I add. The roots will catch fungus if they stay for a longer time in the water or if they stay wet. In rainy season, it's a good idea to add this antifungal. I'll be just taking a pinch of this and sprinkling above. Now as I water, this antifungal will seep slowly into the potting mix and it will give protection against the fungus continuously. I can mix it in the potting mix also. That is also another method. This also can be done. This is the other one. Just sprinkle. That's it. This is the fourth one. Hoya obtusifolia. That's it. I won't water the Hoyas right now because the coconut chips which I used, they were already wet. So it doesn't need watering right now. A little bit just to make the antifungal seep into the potting mix. That much water can be added, or it can be watered that much. Sunlight requirement. Hoyas grow under large trees, as we talked earlier. So they get dappled sunlight. That means the sun rays which come from in between the leaves, they get dappled sun rays. But my experience is they can definitely tolerate about 2 to 3 hours of either morning sun or evening sun. They can tolerate, and if the Hoyas need to bloom, then this direct sunlight for about 2 to 3 hours is of utmost importance. The plant will survive in bright indirect light. You might have seen in so many videos bright indirect light. It will survive. But for blooming, direct sun rays is very important. It has to get at least minimum 2 to 3 hours direct sunlight. My Hoyas are all in the west side of my house. So there they get sun rays, that is direct sun rays, from afternoon onwards, about 1:32 p.m. till about 4 o'clock. So that much sunlight, and till now I have not faced any problem due to the sun rays, direct sunlight. There has been no problem whatsoever. They are able to tolerate that much sun rays. So that is about sunlight. Water requirements. They require consistently moist potting mix. This is my experience. I don't allow the potting mix to go dry. There are so many references, websites and all that, where it has been told that the potting mix needs to dry out. But according to my experience, whenever the potting mix dries out, the vines, they go dry. So I feel, this is out of my observation which I am telling, for Hoyas, a consistently moist potting mix is required. And the logic which I worked out is that these plants grow on the bark, and from the bark they will be taking up constant moisture. It is not too much. In the bark it won't be too much. Not like the roots which are there in the ground, isn't it? So, consistently moist potting mix is compulsory. That means you water it today, then after 3 to 4 days or about 5 days probably, you need to water it again. And especially when you are using coconut chunks, the medium tends to go much more drier and earlier. It becomes dry early also. For that sake, it needs to be watered at least in a gap of 4 to 5 days. And in summer, I water these Hoyas twice a week because direct sun rays are falling on that, on the potting mix. So potting mix dries off, water evaporates and potting mix dries off. I water these Hoyas twice a week in summer, and in other seasons once a week. I check the potting mix. I don't allow it to go dry. That's the trick. That is about the watering schedule. Then about the nutrition. Vermi compost is the best nutrition for the plants. because in coconut chunks there is nothing for it to get nutrition as such. So we have added vermicompost. For blooming, these hoyas, they bloom in spring, that is in March, April. They bloom at that time. And of course, if the hoyas have to bloom, they have to be mature, at least 6 months old, 6 to 1 year old. Then only they will bloom, otherwise they will not bloom. They have to become root bound also. So if a plant is about 1 year old, adding bone meal will definitely boost up flowering. It will start flowering after about 1 month of adding bone meal. That is very much important. For blooming, bone meal is very important. And hoyas love acidic soil, so Epsom salt also plays a very important role. So what we have done here is, in the potting mix, we have created an atmosphere wherein the Hoya feels that it is growing on the bark of a tree. That's it. And because these aerial roots are in the bark, around the aerial roots or the adventitious roots, there will be aeration. Air will be flowing. It will be passing around. So the same atmosphere we have created by using orchid pots. They have got those aeration slits. So air will be passing through, and we have seen the potting mix. It is very, very chunky, and I added this powder, pumice powder also. So it becomes very airy, very loose. So air will pass through the potting mix and it will give aeration to the roots also. So anything I missed out? Lighting we discussed, water we discussed, nutrition we discussed. Some people recommend sprinkling vermicompost on the potting mix. So that how I added antifungal, same way vermicompost also can be sprinkled. So it will seep into the potting mix slowly, and it will act like slow release vermicompost. Little by little the roots will get. And whatever we add in this potting mix, it is enough for about 1.5 to 2 months. After that only we need to replenish it. We have to replenish the vermicompost. So that was about the repotting of Hoyas. Thanks for joining. Take care. Bye.